Bruce Feldman is here, everybody, right here from The Athletic and Fox Sports. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you.
Let's just jump into the coaching carousel. Is Chip Kelly on the hot seat right now here in Los Angeles?
It definitely warmed up with them losing on Saturday night at home against a really terrible Arizona State team. And the interesting part of this is for most of Chip's run there, they really struggled on defense. Well, he made a really good hire this offseason, Danton Lynn, whose dad is a former NFL head coach. Everybody knows, was a guy who grew up in football. They've been really good on defense. They have some really good players. Offensively, they have really struggled over the second half of the season, especially. They're down to like their third string quarterback. That hasn't helped. Their offensive line isn't particularly good. They feel like they're just kind of fizzling on offense. They're 6-4. And they have a reeling USC team. And it just, right now, they really need a win. I don't know, there's a lot of chatter about frustration with fans. I think there's a lot of frustration with fans at UCLA for a couple of reasons. One, he got off to a super slow start the first 3 years, and then it turned around in the last 3 years. He's got it going, pretty good. But then they want it, he doesn't recruit the way a lot of other people want to see him recruit in terms of like doing what Oregon has, does, or doing even what USC does, where you're competing for 5-star guys. They have Dante Moore, who is the 5-star big get, a quarterback, but almost across the board, the best recruiting he's done has been in the transfer portal. And so there's that. And also you already have an apathetic fan base that no matter who's the coach there, I think they're not coming out. This is not like USC football. They don't approach it that way. So, if he loses and goes to 6-5, it would definitely be a disappointing year given that they are backsliding into the season. But again, I think it's hard to say how they're going to operate. I don't think he has a huge buyout there. So
is he coaching for his job against USC, do you think?
I don't know if I would say it as bluntly as that.
Okay.
But he definitely could use a win to quiet all the chatter around there. Because again, I think it was a really bad loss they just had, that people looked at Arizona State as the worst team in the conference, and how do you lose them at home and only score 7 points? It's odd because Chip Kelly's one of the brightest offensive minds in all of football, and we've seen that a lot at times, through there. But what's definitely noteworthy is DTR was a wild roller coaster ride, and he played there for a long time.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of spectacular, and there was a lot of like shaky play, but they've definitely missed him because they just haven't had as much of a spark. The run game's been at times good, at times not so good. The passing game hasn't been what I thought it was going to be. But again, I think, I could see them looking and saying, who are we going to get if he doesn't? Do they try to poach Jonathan Smith, who's done a really good job at Oregon State, who's basically from Pasadena? I don't know if that would be an answer. Do they bring Jed Fish back?
Yeah.
Jed Fish was a UCLA offensive coordinator, and he has done a terrific job at Arizona.
Yeah. And
I know some people there are very fond of Jed. I don't know if Jed would leave, but it's now a Big Ten school as opposed to
a plum gig just for that alone. One would think, even though the Pac-12 is definitely a tougher conference as currently constituted than the Big Ten.
Is, yeah.
There's no question about that.
So it's an interesting dynamic that has come to light in the last week.
In the last week.
Yeah.
Bruce Feldman here on the Rich Eisen Show. Walk me through Texas A&M's options. There's a lot of crazy names being thrown out there.
We're going to throw some of them out, right? So I think if you're a Texas A&M diehard, your dream candidate is the guy who's got the Detroit Lions rolling. He's a Texas A&M guy. Every time you see a minute of Dan Campbell in a locker room scene talking to his team, you're like, holy cow, that guy. That's the guy who should be the head coach here. But he's also the guy who may have them make a playoff run. The timing's awful. You're not getting him to leave, right? So out. You have some other candidates, Dan Lanning, who has SEC ties and worked under Nick Saban and worked under Kirby Smart and doing really well at Oregon. I don't think you could get him, right? I don't think Kalen DeBoer leaves Washington to go there either. The guys I think are more realistic. Mike Elko, the head coach at Duke, was a former Texas A&M defensive coordinator, really well thought of. He's done a terrific job at Duke. Now, he doesn't have a big, long tenure there. He's been there for less than 2 full seasons. But I think in a lot of ways, Jimbo, I don't want to say Jimbo was more style over substance or anything like that, but I think there is an opposite component with Jimbo. To me, felt like, and everything I've talked to a lot of people this week about there who coached there, who felt like Jimbo at Florida State was hungry and energetic and led him to a national title, and then the thing started to crumble underneath him, and then he moved. And what A&M got was some guy who's like had been almost consumed by the ego and the contract, and then they started recruiting. They chased stars and had a lot of entitled kids, and the discipline got off, and it was a mess. I think Mike Elko could manage all that way better. I think Lance Leipold, who's done a remarkable job at Kansas, and quite honestly, Lance Leipold has done an amazing job everywhere he's been. Now, he doesn't know ties to the SEC, and maybe that would be a deterrent to some of them, but he is a culture builder, and the culture at Texas A&M was sorely lacking. So I think those are two guys that could be very attractive to A&M once you get past, these are not flashy names and they're not big personalities that the average college football fan doesn't know who either of those guys are, but that shouldn't matter.
Did they make a run at Deion?
I don't think so, because as much as Deion has, strong recruiting ties and roots in Texas,
yes,
and he's done a really good job, elevating what Colorado was, I don't think, like, on the Deion side of this, even on the A&M side, you have at Colorado, they went all in on Deion. The AD, to his credit, has, what do you need? We're going to make this happen. And they've ridden this ride, and I think it will get better. There's been certainly rocky moments. I mean, they're on a big losing slide right now. But at A&M, I don't think they get that kind of alignment for him. They don't have it, because you had a lot of turnover with the president there. You have an interim, and it's just like, it's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, a lot of money people, and I don't think they go all in on what Deion is and what he brings. And if I'm Deion...
Well, then, if I'm Deion, then forget that.
I'm not dealing with it.
Of course
I'm not dealing with it. If I'm Deion, I also probably am not in position to leave, because I think he knows Shedeur stays another year. Shedeur could be maybe a top 10 quarterback pick.
Yeah.
Travis Hunter, who's like a son to him, he just transferred, last year. He can't transfer again, because the only way you can is if you graduate, and he's too young at this point, I believe, to get another degree. So it's like, it behooves them to stay longer. Also, I think it behooves them to keep recruiting in the portal, because I think he can get them, they'll go to the Big 12. They'll be much better positioned there. If they can get they need to get a lot of big people in there who can play. They have almost none right now.
Yeah, they need sand in the pants, man.
A lot of sand.
They need a lot
of sand.
Right.
And if he can upgrade it, then, he can win 8-9 games, I think. And then all of a sudden he can say, all right, my guys are ready to move on. Now what's my next move? And maybe he wants to stay there, and he could.
And I think he appreciates, what Colorado had done.
They've rolled out the red carpet, and it seems like they have honored their word.
Yeah. And it would just strike me as nuts for anybody to reach out to Deion and go, well, here are our terms. Just like, okay, get out of here.
What's the point then?
If you hire Deion, you literally have to do the Deion plan. It's like just got to be that.
It's like buying a super sports car and driving it in like Del Boca Vista. It's like, what's the point?
Perfectly
there's
said,
no condos
sir.
available in Del Boca Vista, obviously.
Take the pen.
Yeah.
Bruce Feldman here on the Rich Eisen Show. Okay, let's talk about America's team. What'd you think of that comment?
Par for the course. Look, none of us can look away from this, because he's incredibly polarizing. It's funny, when this stuff started to kind of, and when I say this stuff, I mean like 2 days ago stuff, because it's all so long. But I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. I got this big thing with Judge Judy.
Yeah.
And him and I think Jack, may have been the first day. I remember we did like one of the first national interviews with him in Ann Arbor. And it was like, just get there. Jim's going to do it now. And he went off on this random, not a rant, because it wasn't a rant. He wasn't pissed off about it. But it was like something about like Judge Judy. And I'm like sitting there going, are we going to use this? Or like, he went down this, like he's fascinated by all this stuff. Bobby Perry Mason. I think he referenced A Few Good Men the other day. And, like maybe Rob Reiner. Like it's very surreal with Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah.
Very.
Yeah, he talked about, because he sounded like he had a cold or something like that, and he said viruses is like he's the wall that viruses bounce off of, and how he's now raising chickens, so he doesn't have a problem with people eating the nervous bird and stuff like. I mean, bottom line is, what happens Friday? What is going on here? Like, what happens on Friday when there is a hearing for a temporary restraining order to get Jim Harbaugh back on the sideline?
And get them through Ohio State.
Well, I guess. I don't know. I mean, what's your sense on how this works? Is this going to be like a Jim, the team's flying to Maryland while he's sitting in front of a judge testifying? Is that what's happening?
This.
Or like, how does this work?
All the people who you would think matter were very convinced that they will win this. And
on Friday. Well, weren't they convinced that they were going to win it last Friday?
Friday. People, whether it's the Big Ten, whether it's on the Harbaugh side, were like, oh, yeah, legal people were like, okay, he's going to get cleared, like that. And it was almost like, okay, maybe this is the best case scenario for Tony Petitti in that he looks like he's standing up for the rest of the Big Ten, does what he can do, and then all of a sudden it goes into a Michigan judge, and the Michigan judge was like, and he's cleared. Now, look, that's that judge right now on Friday. Jim Harbaugh being there in person.
He says he wants to speak.
Let him speak, man. Like, I do think, the part that's crazy in this is like in the statement Tony Petitti put out on Friday, last Friday, was we're not sanctioning Jim Harbaugh.
Oh, whatever. That was the legalese stuff to try and, basically tell a judge that's looking at this, there's no irreparable harm because we're not going against the coach. This is nothing personal at all. Remember last month or whatever we were talking about it, and I've said it's not personal with Jim, and you kind of shot me one of your famed looks when we're having this conversation. But of course it's personal. There is nothing in my mind that I don't doubt that it is something personal against Jim Harbaugh, but they're allowing him to coach during the week, but just not on the weekend. Like, what sort of cockamamie arrangement is that?
The weird part of this, and as we take like two steps back, is that I think Tony Petitti got himself in a untenable position by having these meetings with the other coaches from the conference, because at that point it comes into I don't know if I can say, if I don't know if I can say it, I can't say it on this, but like a crime, like you're just all coming down and going, hey, this is wrong, and they're putting so much pressure on him, where you almost never have that in any form of an NCAA justice system.
Ever. This is so unprecedented in the fact that the investigation is not complete. It's not complete. And it's just like, if you have something, put it out there. You know what I'm saying?
The part that I will like push back on that is like, okay, the evidence that they have, and they shared it with, the NCAA on a call with
where Michigan lawyers and regents were listening in or something
and
like
all
that.
This, but they shared it with Michigan. And so they can go through the evidence, and some of the video evidence that they have could be damning for Connor Stallions and Michigan, and Jim Harbaugh is the head coach, so he's oversees all that. Now, what the punishment is for all that, because if I'm sitting there going, okay, that taints Jim Harbaugh is the head coach, that this happened on them, and they've shown this evidence or whatever. But then what is that worth? Is that worth X amount of dollars? Because they could fine him $1 billion and that wouldn't matter. Like that, to me would be like, that's not going to be good enough for anybody in the Big Ten. They could, but it has to be the suspension of Jim Harbaugh. But how long is Jim Harbaugh supposed to be suspended for this?
Because we don't know. You can't tell. It's totally arbitrary. Let's just choose 3 games because it's the rest of the regular season. Because we don't know what Jim is guilty of, other than currently right now running a program where somebody was running completely amok.
But he's responsible for it.
According to the NCAA, not the Big Ten. Am I wrong?
The Big Ten is part of the NCAA.
Well, no, but the Big Ten's rules.
Yes.
Right? I mean, I did my best to read that 10-page document or 12-page document, whatever it was, that was attached to the 4-paragraph statement saying Jim's out, where there will be no questions taken. And I did my best to read it. And all I kept thinking to myself was, Where'd the 3 games come from? Is it just because it's the rest of the regular season?
It's the most important part of the regular season.
I guess. Look, man, we can go back and forth on.
Let me ask you this:
Sure.
If you're Ryan Day, the last 2 years have been what they have in the Big Ten. Ryan Day, great coach. Mm-hmm. Michigan's had their number the last 2 years. If you're going into this, do you like? This shouldn't be the justice system of how the Big Ten operates. But if I'm them, if I'm Ryan Day, I actually want Jim Harbaugh to be the coach of Michigan when I play him. Because what happens? You beat them. Now, we just saw them beat Penn State. It was at Penn State. They were the better team. Maryland, I think you could coach them against Maryland.
Oh, you do?
Oh, I do.
Okay.
I do.
All right. I'm not available.
But again, not a knock on Shawn Moore. Not even really a knock on Maryland. It's just I think they're that much better.
Okay.
But Ohio State, if you're, let's say Jim Harbaugh is still suspended for that game, and Ohio State ends up beating them, upsetting them like 31-28 or whatever. Like, if you're an Ohio State fan, does that really get all the pressure off Ryan Day? And all
absolutely
this stuff?
It does. Oh, please, let me speak on behalf of Ohio State fans. All it takes is just 1/10 of a point better than Michigan, and what it proves is that Michigan only beat Ryan Day over the last 2 years because of the cheating. That's it.
But there's no.
That's what's at stake.
But Jim Harbaugh's not coaching in that game. If I say
there is no other piece of stakes on this game than that. And I say this knowing that this means the winner moves on to the Big Ten championship game and potentially the loser is out in the college football playoffs. That's just the 2023 stakes. I'm talking about legacy stakes, all-time stakes, argument stakes. All it takes is for Ohio State to beat Michigan by one infinitesimal
whether Jim
tenth
Harbaugh's
of a
there
point.
or not.
Whether Jim Harbaugh's there or not, it proves, the reason why we've gotten our ass kicked the last 2 years, the reason why, to forget about the whole idea of not being able to stop Donovan Edwards or Aiden Hutchinson. We could go on and on about the line of scrimmage argument that Michigan dominated in front of everyone to see. Doesn't matter. Ohio State beat Michigan this year. Doesn't matter if Jim's there or not. It's because Michigan was cheating. And everything that Connor Stallions did was 100% with Jim Harbaugh's knowledge, and everything that they did every step of the way, from buying the tickets to shooting the video to taking the video and discerning off the video what they were doing with the play calling, and then in the moment, in real time, when they did it, it was all worked pristinely. Never once did it fall apart or they got the wrong information or the video was shaky. Never once. That is what is at stake if Ohio State beats Michigan by any stretch of the imagination.
So the flip side of this,
yes,
as I infer from you, is that whether Shawn Moore is the head coach or Jim Harbaugh, if Michigan wins, and let's say Michigan covers, whatever it's going to be, let's say Michigan wins 28-20, then does that invalidate everything else from the last 2 years?
Absolutely.
That's where we're at?
Invalidate what? That because, hold on a second. Michigan has not lost since Connor Stallions has been ripped out root and branch and sent packing with all of his vacuum cleaners and everything else. They have not lost. They have actually, everybody's been given a heads up for weeks.
But this is the first.
For
this
weeks,
was the first
they've
really
had
good opponent
weeks,
they played.
Correct, fine. But if Michigan was so inept over those years that they needed to cheat in order to actually not lose a Big Ten game, and by the way, forget the fact that some of these games against Ohio State, Michigan was losing. Forget the fact that Rutgers beat him on one play earlier this year, to go up early. And forget all those moments where these systems clearly didn't work or weren't completely effective. Forget all of that. They cheated. Paul Feinbaum thinks that this guy's the worst human being on the planet. We're seeing that on ESPN. All of that gets flipped if Michigan goes the rest of the way without the system ripped out root and branch. You don't believe so? You don't believe so? It doesn't remove the fact that they should be held responsible for it when an investigation's fully complete. Doesn't mean that they shouldn't receive criticism or scorn for it. But what it does remove are any asterisks in anything that Michigan needed it in order to be dominant. How does winning the rest of the way not communicate that?
I think this is like nothing can be that cut and dry. I totally get where you're coming from.
Okay.
I feel like I cannot wait for this game. I cannot wait to go there for Thanksgiving. I feel like it's going to be like the last scene from Slapshot, where you're having like such a like, there was a part. So I think we did talk about this like a month ago. So Notre Dame game, Ohio State wins there, and Ryan Day, very emotional. Where's Lou Holtz? And it's Ohio State versus everybody.
Yeah. Being
on that sideline, the Michigan sideline, like right before kickoff and right after, there was definitely T-shirts
and
or
Penn State,
sweatshirts. Yes, I'm sorry. Penn State. There were Michigan versus everybody. With the possible exception of like when Cam Newton was Superman for Auburn, I cannot remember now there might have been like a Jerry Tarkanian UNLV team that's like pre my time covering the sport, but like I can't remember an elite team that had this much of like feeling like we are against the establishment right now. Like Miami definitely had that, when Jimmy Johnson was there, when Dennis Erickson was there, but Miami was like an independent. This is Michigan against the Big Ten, so much so. And again, I hesitated to bring this part up, just like being there. I remember thinking one of the first series of the game at Penn State, it's like a 4th and 3 for Michigan, and Penn State gets a running into the kicker penalty, running into the punter penalty.
Oh, they picked up the flag.
And they picked up the flag.
And Fox didn't show the replay. I'll be honest, I heard about it through so many of my friends, and they're like, where was it? And then I looked at it.
Through an unbiased eye, and you said?
No, through an unbiased eye. I swear to you, through an unbiased eye. I'm at the craft party in Germany. I'm watching this on my phone and scrubbing it back. And I didn't see it. And I did think to myself, okay.
I didn't see
him being shoved into him.
Oh, okay.
I didn't see that to pick up a flag.
But
pick up a flag.
Yeah, the part that I wondered about was after that, thinking it was a 5-yard penalty, and then you get a first down, and it's basically a turnover. It's a turnover.
Right, correct.
This is where we're at with Michigan and the Big Ten right now, where every call is going to be questioned because now the way this language and the AD Ward Manual issued, maybe it was an hour before kickoff, like a scorching statement about the Big Ten.
Yes, he did.
And I was just like, oh my goodness, this is nasty.
Why don't they go to the Big 12?
What?
Yeah.
If they're so angry with the Big Ten, leave. Everyone else is switching conferences.
No. There's contracts, there's all sorts of stuff. And, do you know the actual legal part of this on Friday? Have you dug in? Do you have, will there be a decision Friday? Yes or no from the bench? You can go off to Maryland, or you cannot?
I don't know for sure on that.
We don't know that.
The stuff we thought was going to happen, then to find out that this is the judge who people initially talked about, has stronger Michigan ties than you would have thought. But people were so confident they thought we were going to have it. At this point, I'm like, oh.
And now I wouldn't be confident either because, I'm everything that I'm reading is just, you normally when a TRO is asked for, it's either granted or denied. They're not like, we'll talk about it in a week.
Yeah.
And then it'll be difficult for how can Michigan say there's irreparable harm here
when you just won?
He just won.
I know.
This judge could be like, well, if I'm not mistaken,
4-0 without him.
You ran it 28 straight times.
This also
overruled.
This reminded me a little bit of Mike Leach's case against Texas Tech, in that there was a lot of pushback
about the hazing and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, but he was owed a lot of money,
right?
And
I see. Okay.
Then it was like, was he smeared in this? And then he ended up getting a job, and it was like, I think people, and again, I'm not a legal mind at all, but like, I think there was a rationalization part. It was like, well, he's still going to make a lot of money in this job, so it's not like he can't get a job or can't get a similar paying job,
right?
The part where I would say maybe feel more confident is after what I saw the other day. It's a really talented team. Like, I still say, I told you this like 3 weeks ago. I think they're fine without Jim Harbaugh. He's there Sunday through Friday.
Which is crazy. I mean, like, that's nuts. But no, it's not against him. It's only against the school. Back here on the Rich Eisen Show Radio Network, 5 minutes left with Bruce Feldman. Let's hit a little bit on what Chris was talking about, because I do hear from a lot of Michigan fans and friends who are like, they should leave the Big Ten. If that's the way the new commissioner feels about him and this school, and that's the way he's treating one of the most valuable assets of the Big Ten.
NFC? Like, I mean, you're in the Big Ten.
I don't think so. I don't think this is possible. But you brought it up. Like,
it was just a Twitter topic over the weekend.
There's a lot of stupid things that are on Twitter.
Of course, but why can't they go to the Big 12?
Why would they go to the Big 12? The Big 12 makes way less money.
That's an easy win for them every year to be in the college football
No, he's talking
playoff.
about money.
I'm talking about being
the
in the
SEC
playoff.
wouldn't take Michigan. The SEC wouldn't take
Now,
it.
you know what would be interesting about that? The SEC, I don't want to say ESPN runs the SEC, but it's a completely different orbit they'd be in.
Well, I imagine my school is not too fond of the four-letter network in Bristol right now.
I would imagine they are not.
So. I would imagine that they're not terribly pleased with them.
But there's all kinds of TV contracts that I think that are so tied into this. You think there's a legal battle with Jim Harbaugh now? I can't imagine what that would be like if Michigan tried to
leave the Big Ten.
To leave, they have a better chance to go to the CFL.
I get that, but you just see all the conference change up in the last few years. It just seems like, well, you don't like what's going on here. Go somewhere else.
Man, good luck for the Big Ten asking Michigan for anything in a long time. And at some point, hey, can you move this time for start time to accommodate this partner, that partner? And
by the way, it's rare.
Phone, who dis? I'm sorry. I gave my phone to Connor Stallions 2 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, honestly, get out of here.
Your relatively new university president, though, is all in.
I know.
And it's like
he is. And I'm sure Jim appreciates it.
I would imagine.
And Ward Manuel, that was a conversation, is that, the athletic director and Jim, despite both being, on the same team, right? On Bo, when Bo was coaching. That they were gear grinding too.
No, absolutely. That's all you hear about it.
But it was a scorched earth.
He definitely had
release.
their back. And again, I think some of this that we overlook in the media is like it's the players in the middle of this, right? It is the players in the middle of this. And, I've seen people argue, oh, J.J. McCarthy shouldn't be in the Heisman race. Or, it's like
Stephen A. was saying they shouldn't even be in they should sit out until the college football.
Watch college football.
No. I mean, look, but then Desmond pushed back and told him, like, look, these are the actual facts, and this is what's going on in the field. This is what the game tape shows. And even Stephen A. changed his mind. But we had RG3 on before, and I'm like, did Feinbaum not get a hug once from Harbaugh? Like, what happened? And he said that there's some things that they can't report that they know of that makes them feel, I guess, a little more strident. And that's the whole thing. Again, it's like, what is known? And the fact that this
some of the video stuff that I think that the Big Ten feels like it has, again, it's like...
But that video, do we know it actually led to Jim Harbaugh saying, pay that guy to buy more tickets? You know what I mean? Like, that's the point.
Well, then it has to come down to if the Big Ten has said, which it has, that it can't conclusively say that Jim Harbaugh had knowledge of this, it still, to me, gets you back into this area where, okay, he's guilty of him, because it's that NCAA rule where it's like he's on your staff. And I think if a lot of other people knew, where there's other assistants, they can say have knowledge of what Connor Stallions do. But whether Jim Harbaugh didn't, I mean, to me, that's a different threshold, right? It's all new stuff, meaning it's like unprecedented. So, like, again, what is the punishment for this? Because I mean, as much as the Big Ten coaches spoke out to Tony Petitti, there's also a lot of coaches who will speak out and say, this is wrong. You know what's worse? Tampering. And, what is like...
Although, what Amy Trask would say on What the Football, as she did the other day, what's worse is stealing teams to break up the Pac-12. That's what's worse.
The Big Ten definitely did that. So.
That's what she's saying. She's just like, what's worse? What's worse behavior? At any rate, thank you for coming on, sir. Have a great Thanksgiving. Well, I'll see you next week before Thanksgiving.
Can't wait to see what happens with your alma mater.
Nor can I, because the stakes are as high as they have ever been. Period. End of story. Jason McCourty coming up. Still here for another minute and a half. Yeah, man. I mean exactly what I say. Trust me, I want to win the Natty. Certainly if Harbaugh's going to leave, I'd love to do that. But when it all comes down to it, this is about the last 2 years, about the turnaround of this program, about what Michigan has been, and in terms of our fans, me, prideful of the most, that there's this I mean, you see the ESPN the number of times I've had it texted to me from Ohio State people and tweeted at me by Ohio State people of like, this was the record before, the last 2 years, and this is the record, since Connor Stallions has been around. By the way, that Stallions wasn't there from the very beginning of that point of demarcation that ESPN keeps putting up there. So Every single day. Like, do you hear what they're saying on First Take? Do you see what they're saying? I'm like, whatever. Just win. And you're saying that doesn't eventually technically erase everything.
I don't know. Like, what do you do? Not you, but like if Ohio State wins by 2 touchdowns. Does it invalidate the last 2 years?
I don't think so, but
it's really interesting to me.
Just don't turn on channel 206 on DirecTV when that happens.
It's just really interesting because then if Michigan wins by 2 touchdowns, then do you say, "Hey, everybody, shut up"?
Same intensity is what I keep texting.
That was a Michael Irvin line.
That's correct. Don't lose that intensity. Same intensity 2 weeks from now, 2 Saturdays from now, on Fox.
That will not. Yeah.
Good to see you, sir. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.